MJ versus LeBron, the 80s, the 90s versus the 2000s, the 2020s. Who is your GOAT? Today is 8th of November 2021, and this is the topic we'll be discussing. As an NBA fan, as a basketball fan, I feel like I should at least talk about this once, right? It's obviously not a new conversation. Tons of people have shared their opinions, analysts, laypersons like myself, and we all have our own opinions. But who is your GOAT? Now there's this new video, or rather it's not really new, but there's a video about 30 minutes long. This person under the name of Danger Productions. Pretty in-depth analysis about this topic. I recommend you go and watch it. I'll put the link in the video here. And he talks about the comparison between the two. So at the start of the video, he puts out this quote by Walter Payton. When you're good at something, you will tell everyone. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. So right off the bat, if you're already aware of the conversation here, you know exactly which side he's standing on, right? So he uses 5 main categories to come to a conclusion about who is the better player. So 5 of them: accomplishment, which goes to Michael Jordan; longevity, which he gave it to LeBron; winning, which he gave to Jordan; statistics, which, and here I will disagree a bit, but he gave it to Jordan; and then eye test to Jordan too. Okay, so accomplishment, personal accolades, pretty straightforward. If you compare who has more personal accolades, Jordan has pretty wide gap on LeBron, right? Even if LeBron doesn't retire now, maybe 2 seasons, 3 seasons from now, I don't think he'll catch up. Longevity, very clearly for LeBron, not only in terms of how long LeBron has played, but his peak, how at his best. I think his peak was much longer span than Jordan. Jordan's peak was probably, if you don't consider the 6 finals that he won, also maybe 2 years before that, 1990s maybe to 98. That was LeBron, probably from somewhere in the middle of his first Cavaliers career until the end of his Cavaliers career. So I think slightly longer, right? And then winning, obviously Michael Jordan, because 6-0. And then statistics. Okay, so this is the part where I kind of disagree with him. So what he is comparing here in terms of statistics is per game stats versus total stats. So he's saying that total stats shouldn't be used because he already has a category called longevity. So the more seasons you play, the more stats you get. The more points you gather, the more rebounds you gather. Right? So I think he put up a pretty fair point. But while longevity has already been considered as a separate category, to get as much points as LeBron has gathered, and the rest of the other stats too, you need to be consistently very good, right? You can't just be putting up 10 points per game even though he's in his late 30s, right? So you take Vince Carter, for example. Vince Carter had played in the NBA for many seasons. But looking from season 14 onwards, when he went to Memphis, I think, he was averaging less than 20 points per game, right? And season 21 onwards, he was not even getting 10 points, right? LeBron James at season number 18, he's still getting more than 20 points per game. So LeBron James has been very good for a very long time, and you can't just take that statistics category away from him like that, right? So personally, before watching this video, if you ask me who wins in the statistics category, I would give it to Lebron. But this video, he not only used the per game stats, but he also used like the advanced stats, PER, and all kind of stuff. And it seems very much in favor of Jordan, right? So you can't deny that the point per game stats are just so much in favor of Jordan, right? Only 3 categories, I believe, was in favor of LeBron James. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was assists, rebounds, and one more. I can't remember what was it. Right. So if we are looking at just this category called statistics, I think maybe the fair judgment would be a tie. So out of 5 categories, Jordan has accomplishment, winning, and eye test, and then LeBron has longevity, right? Statistics being tied. So this discussion about who is the GOAT is very subjective, right? It really depends on what you value more. But let's look at some of the biggest claims and biggest critiques of each player. So Michael Jordan's biggest claim to glory, 6-0, right? Undefeated in the NBA finals. In fact, if you look at all the finals he has participated, he is undefeated, which is pretty awesome of an accomplishment. LeBron James' biggest claim to glory, 8 straight trips to the finals, starting from his first year in Miami to his second last year in Cavaliers in Cleveland, right? But in total he has 10 trips, so 1 more in his first stint in Cleveland, and then 1 more in the recently in LA, right? And then 1 more claim to glory, which you can't leave it out, is coming back 1-3 against Golden State Warriors, right? This is the one where he controversially said that he was the GOAT, right? Remember the quote that right at the beginning, when you're good at something, you tell everyone. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. So Jordan has never said that he was the GOAT. In fact, he has always kind of dodged the question. He has always said, no, we never played in the same era as the people like Wilt Chamberlain, So it's very hard to compare people from different eras. But at the same time, he has never denied being the GOAT, right? So I think something to consider here, right? Whether you're good at something or whether you're great at something, as according to Walter Payton. Now, MJ's biggest critic is this. He had never won prior to Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson, right? Prior to 1991, he was always knocked out pretty early. Never got to the finals, right? He never got to the finals prior to the Pippen and Phil Jackson coming in. LeBron's biggest critic is out of the 10 finals that he's been there, he only won 4, right? So out of the 6 that he lost, 2 of it he lost 4-0, 2 of it he lost 4-1. So he has very lopsided losses that he belongs to, or rather he's involved in a lot of these lopsided losses, right? But here's the thing about team wins and team losses. While you can give certain players more credit than others, or more critic than others, at the end of the day, it is a team effort. So for LeBron to have lost so many times in the finals, it might be a little unfair to say, look, just because you lost so much and you lost in such big margins, that's why you just are not on par with Jordan. But I think that's where the eye test comes in, right? Even though you could say that, 6-0 is a team effort, but you very well knew who the leader was and how much effort Jordan gave every game to make sure that they won, right? And there's always stories, if you watch The Last Dance, of how he would be very hard on his teammates during practice, right? They practice harder than any games they played, apparently. So that's the kind of leadership that you get from Jordan. Probably not a very nice person to be with, but as a leader on a game, in a game of basketball, I don't think you can take that away from him. But we have to recognize that, it's a team sport. There's team element to it. You can't just blame one person for losing, right? And I think that's a very fair critique. But there is one particular final that this is my biggest critique of LeBron, right? And this is just one final where you go, what the hell is happening here, right? So the year or the season is the 2010-2011 season, right? LeBron James had just left Cleveland to join Miami, right, to form a big three with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, right? And we all should be aware of that. Not one, not two, not three. I think he went up to not 6, right? He's saying that we're going to win a lot of championships at Miami. So that was the promise he gave to the people of Miami, and there was a lot of hype. They were a new team. The thing with new teams is that you need some time to get used to it. I think very early on to the season, they were getting used to each other, and they weren't really steamrolling people. But by the end of the season, they were doing very well, very, very well, right? And they clearly showed that they were the favorites, right? Fast forward to the NBA Finals, Dallas versus Miami. Now, prior to this, Miami had just beat Chicago Bulls 4-1, right? Chicago Bulls had Derrick Rose, who was that regular season MVP. And there was a lot of hype about how LeBron James was shutting him out. I don't think he was guarding Derrick Rose for most of the games, but in critical moments he was shutting him out, which was true. And this was where people were saying, oh, LeBron James can guard from position 1 to position 5, right? Point guard to center, right? So lots of hype going into the finals. Odds also very much in favor of Miami, and there was even some footage of the big three from Miami laughing when they knew that Dallas Mavericks was their opponent in the finals. Now, I think a lot of people will bring up that Dallas Mavericks wasn't much. I mean, they weren't exactly a bad team either, right? They had beaten the Lakers 4-0. The Lakers at that time was the defending champions, right? 2 times defending champions, right? So this Dallas Mavericks team wasn't bad, right? But the odds were definitely against them. In fact, one of the funny thing about this finals was that JJ Barea played just superbly well. But let's not go too much into this. So the odds were in favor of Miami, and they lost 4-2. Right. Now, remember I said you can't blame team losses to an individual player. You can't blame LeBron James for losing 4-2. The team was just overly confident that they were going to win against a pretty old. Jason Kidd was pretty old, I think, and then Dirk Nowitzki wasn't exactly very young. I think he was on the downward trend of his prime, and and so this wasn't really exactly an elite team. Now we gotta remember that. Of that finals, well, we can't blame LeBron James for the 4-2 loss. However, there is one game that really stood out. That was Game 4. Game 4, LeBron James scored 8 points. Not in one quarter, not in one half, but 8 points in the entire game. Now, the people that were guarding him were mostly Jason Kidd and Jason Terry, both significantly smaller in terms of physique. Right? They weren't considered a great defensive threat to LeBron. He was just being very passive, I believe. Right? So it was very odd for him to not put that kind of output. Yes, he did contribute. He had something like 9 rebounds and 7 assists. So he did contribute other ways, but he at that point of time, he is the best player in the league, right? He had tons of accolades by that time, and he was just missing that championship, right? In fact, when the first time he started playing in the NBA, he was already dubbed the king. And this was the first time that he had a good team, legitimate good team as compared to his first stint in Cleveland, right? And not only was they a good team, they were the favorites, right? So at this point of the game, or this part of the series, the score was 2-1 in favor of Miami. Winning this game would be 3-1, and at 3-1 you more or less would have closed the deal. Of course, sometimes it doesn't, but for the most part, it's 3-1, more or less you're already there, right? So he was a favorite, he was the best player at the time. There was opportunity to go up 3-1, and he didn't show up. That's not good mentality, right? No matter how bad Jordan played, right, and he had bad games. I think prior to the Wizards' time, he probably never scored single digits. I don't think so, right? So, but he has had bad games, but you don't see him giving up. But he always fought. And this was definitely the time for LeBron James to show up, to shine, right? Take the lead. And it was a very close game, by the way, something like 3 points difference. So it wasn't like they were being run down, right? Being beat 20 points, and then the coach decided to bench LeBron James to rest him for the next game. No, it was a very close game. I believe it was 86-83 in favor of Dallas, right at the end of the game. Right? So, and after losing game 4, Miami never won another game. Right? So 2-1, instead of being 3-1 up, it became 2-2, 3-2, and then 4-2. And that was the end of it. So that, I feel, for me, that's the biggest critic I have for LeBron James. You had an opportunity to shine, you had an opportunity to take the lead, and you didn't. Now, there was, of course, a lot of critique after that season, and they were saying, like, they might be still unsure about who to take the last shot. Should it be Dwayne Wade? Should it be LeBron James? Right? And because of that, there was a lot of hesitancy. And probably within that series, LeBron James was just letting Dwayne Wade do too much instead of him taking the lead. Right, and so over the years, you can see that he has kind of changed his. Especially for the next 2 years, he took the lead, and they won two seasons, and then LeBron in total won 4 seasons, right? But I think this was a good example of how I don't think he is the greatest of all time. And then of course you can use other examples like losing 1-4 to a very old San Antonio Spurs. In fact, what was it? 2001, 2011, 12, 13, right? The repeat that they got against San Antonio, or Miami's repeat title against the San Antonio Spurs, they nearly lost that. Right? They were 3-2 down, then Ray Allen pushed game 6 into overtime. But the following year, then they met the same San Antonio team, and then they got their ass handed, right? 4-1. It was a pretty bad defeat. But I believe that this game 4 of the 2011 final, that was the stain, at least to me, forever be a stain on his resume. Like prior to 91, prior to MJ winning, never really looked like he would give up on the team. In fact, he always wanted to do more, And then when Phil Jackson came in to take the lead, he was reluctant, Michael Jordan was reluctant to give control of the ball. But the dynamics, you see it changing, and it became more of a winning basketball, winning team strategy, and Jordan just flourished from there on. Right. So ultimately, I guess it is still a very subjective topic. We have our self-bias, obviously. Being a early 80s baby and watching Jordan grow as I was growing up, I think it's going to be very hard for me to replace him as the GOAT. There are also a lot of circumstances that were in favor of Jordan, right? You don't have social media to lambast you at every single mistake that you made. We all know from hindsight that Jordan was a crazy gambling addict, right? And I mean, if that was happening right now in the present climate, I don't think he might get away as easily as he did, right? Some of his antics weren't exactly role model-ish, right? So, but I think I am biased, of course. I think the case for MJ being the GOAT is a lot stronger than LeBron James. I think just take a look at this 30 minutes video. I'll be posting the link. I think it shows a lot of good stats, a good comparison. The eye test, for example, like who you depend, who you want the last shot, and yep, that's it from me for this topic. See you.